Okay, so good morning, everybody. In the book club, we've got a really interesting, exciting interview happening today. So we're very blessed to have with us two of the authors of this book, Mindfulness for Challenging Times. So we've got Elspeth Lewis with us, and we've got Shamash Alidina. I'm pronouncing that right, am I, Shamash?
Yeah, you got it right. First time, impressed.
Brilliant. That's great. So this book, I mean, I've never seen a title that is more appropriate, obviously, for these times.
Yeah.
Mindfulness in Challenging Times. So I think it'd be great, like Elspeth, you run Pause to Be, your own mindfulness company. Could you give us a quick intro just to who you are first? Would that be cool?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Elspeth Lewis. I'm a mum of two. That's one of my hats. And I'm also a mindfulness teacher. I live in Edinburgh and I have a business called Pause to Be. And I actually trained with Shamash to teach mindfulness, which was a real turning point for me. So I came into mindfulness after quite a tough time in my life and lost both my parents to cancer and went through divorce. So I had a real sort of period of chronic stress and found mindfulness to be a real, really helpful, effective way to sit with the challenges that would come up. And I found it so powerful, actually, that then I wanted to share it with other people. And was really grateful to find Shamash and train with him and to be able to share that with others. So I love doing
Thank
what
you
I
so
do.
much. And we'll definitely explore that because you've got your own section in the book all around parenting and things, which is fantastic. So we'll definitely explore that a bit later. And Shamash, could you give us a bit of an intro to yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm a mindfulness teacher trainer mainly, and author of books on mindfulness. And yeah, I just love cultivating communities. I'm based here in London, looking at the snow falling outside. I'm really passionate about mindfulness. I've been into it since I was about age 20, halfway through my degree at university. And I spent 10 years teaching children physics, chemistry, biology, but also as a school where they had meditation and mindfulness. And the last 10 or 11 years, I've been focusing just full time on teaching mindfulness. And then after that, training mindfulness teachers. And there's another thing called ACT, which I think Elspeth is very passionate about, as well as myself, which is another form of mindfulness, another way to cultivate mindfulness. And it quite link, I think you wanted to touch a bit upon business and success. That's quite nice as well, because it focuses on values and about taking action going forwards, as well as being in the present moment. So, yeah.
Brilliant. So I don't want to give away your age, but it must have been like really like a very much ahead of its time doing meditation in schools at that time, was it?
Yeah, at that time it was. In fact, that school was one of the only ones. It's called St. James, and it was the only one, I think, in the country that was offering it but it opened in 1975. So really early on, before everyone just thought it was extremely weird to do that. And I joined it in the year 2000, and there was only 3 schools in the country doing it. I went to visit them all, actually. One of them was called the Krishnamurti School, which is in Hampshire. I went to visit it, but you had to live there as well as teach there, and it just became your whole life. So I decided not to. One of them was, I think it was in Lancashire. It was like a Maharishi school, so it was very much stuck in a certain belief system, and they're into some weird stuff as well. So I decided not to go there. And this was the other one that I found. So that's why I decided. I said, if I get a job here, I'll be a school teacher. If I didn't get a job there, I would have done something else, actually. So it's lucky they gave me a job.
Brilliant. And we'll definitely explore that around, the origins and things in a little bit. But first of all, I'd love to talk about the actual book itself. So one of the things that I was most definitely impressed by, I mean, it's a really substantial book, 26 authors, isn't that right?
Yeah.
And you published it in May last year. So could you give me just a little bit of background? How did it come about? How did you manage to put a book together between?
Well, we were chatting a bit brief. Were you asking me or?
Yeah, and either for both of you, really. Yeah, go ahead, Shamash. Yeah.
Okay, I'll share my part of it, and then Elspeth can share hers. So it's similar to you, because we were chatting a bit briefly earlier about how you got started with this club. And for me, I was feeling isolated because I'm normally kind of traveling and meeting people a lot, and I love mindfulness, but I also love connecting with people. So I was missing that. And then I was also concerned about the mindful teachers, because if I've trained all these teachers and they're so used to teaching in person, and suddenly everything was forced to go online. So I was in a local park, and I was just doing I was experimenting with the Facebook Live thing for the group, and I was just chatting, and I was like, hey, what should we do? And someone suggested writing a chapter for a book, and another person suggested it. And I thought, okay, let's see if everybody wants to write a chapter together. We could actually put a book. And 26 people said yes to doing a chapter. And I said, just suggest chapters. So they all suggested chapters. And I wasn't sure if, out of the 26, how many people will actually write the chapters, but absolutely every single one, I think, wrote a chapter, which was really amazing. And it all came together and it all worked out because everyone could see what everyone was writing. And so everyone picked their own topic. And so they're all pretty different too. And so it actually took us a while to come up with that title. Eventually we came up with Mindfulness for Challenging Times. And it was an amazing experience, actually. I'd never written a book together with a community. I never knew if it was really possible and if we could do it in the time frame. But it was a really amazing giving opportunity, a wonderful act of giving by all the mindful teachers to take their time to do that. To spend the many hours that they did to write their chapters, and they all did it so carefully, and they all even created a guided meditation or two to go with each chapter, so we ended up with 40 or 50 meditations as well, which is really, really nice. It was amazing.
I was saying so I really enjoyed that bit in the book about the park, and so that would have been not long after lockdown, was it? Or when was that? Can you remember?
It was a month or two, so maybe a month into the lockdown, something like that.
And I was saying to Elspeth earlier, and the value, I can't get over I've really enjoyed the recordings as well. To have the book, when I started the book, I read the first kind of exercise, and then it had the link there, and I went on the link, and I was just blown away by the number of recordings there as well. So the value is just immense, really, really is. So Elspeth, over to you. What's your recollection of the first kind of meetings and the project coming together?
Oh yeah, wonderful idea. I just thought it was a really wonderful opportunity for me, who was stuck at home, or I should say staying safe at home, homeschooling, had to stop doing my in-person classes, and I was working out how to transfer my classes online. The numbers were going down. Lots of pressures. And this was like such an exciting project to be offered the opportunity to be part of writing a book and to have the support of Shamash and the community, and to get to work with an editor and have a book published. It was just like, I'm so grateful to have had that during such a difficult year. But it really made me feel like I'd done something purposeful, and that I'd achieved something in a tricky year. So wonderful project, really,
Brilliant.
really. So
doesn't
much
it just
thanks.
prove that last year was such a tricky year for many people, but there has been immense positivity has come out of it as well, and this book is a prime example of that. So I think for people watching, who some people may not know, they may have heard the term mindfulness, could you give us maybe a quick sort of background, what it is, kind of how it works? So Shamash, if you could do that, and then maybe Elspeth, you could talk a little bit more about your experiences and the benefits that you experienced. Does that make sense?
Yeah, great question. Maybe we could start with the distinction between mindfulness and meditation, because people put them together. And you can do meditations, which is where you take your time for a few minutes or even longer to actually be present. But the mindfulness in itself is a quality of just being in the here and now. Whenever they do research, they find about half the time our mind is wandering into the past and the future. It's just going off all over. And half the time it's actually in the here and now, which means that, as we're doing this interview and people are listening, half the time they'll be kind of present listening to what's going on. And the other half of the time, they might all be going off into other places. But it's not exactly the same for everyone. Some people are more present, some people are less. And people just think, I've just got a wandering mind, or I'm quite a present person. But it's not a fixed trait like, other aspects of us. It's a skill that we can learn. So you can actually do mindful exercises or mindful meditations, and your brain actually starts changing within 2-3 days. And the more you do it, the more it changes and you become more present. And the research that found that people's minds wander about half the time, they called it a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. The name of the paper. They found that when people were more present in the here and now, they felt healthier and they felt happier, and it also made them healthier as well. There's so many knock-on benefits of being in the present. So essentially, mindfulness is about being in the here and now with certain attitudes and qualities, like a sense of kindness. You can call it mindfulness. You can actually call it kindfulness, which is about being kind and compassionate as you're in the moment. It's about being curious. So just noticing with a sense of curiosity what's going on inside you with all those difficult emotions that may be coming up and thoughts. Rather than just trying to get rid of them, you start actually being curious, which is helpful. And another one, which is an interesting one, which people feel sometimes some resistance towards, which is it's about acceptance. So, okay, we may not be enjoying this feeling we're having, or this thought we're having, or this physical sensation we're having, or the situation in our life. But if we can start just accepting a bit, then we stop fighting with the present moment. We're kind of making peace with what's happening right now, and then change can happen. So, one of my favorite quotes is acceptance starts first, and then change can come later from there. But if you're not willing to accept what's going on, then how can we know where to go? So yeah, that gives you a little bit of a flavor of
I can so identify with a lot of that, definitely, particularly around acceptance. And I've had a few health challenges over my whole lifetime, really. And that's one thing I've only learned, I would say, in the last 18 months, is that the first step is to accept. And I didn't accept for many, many years. And as a result of that, I've moved to a place of just feeling healthier, in many ways. But as you say, there's resistance to that at first. It takes a bit of practice.
Yeah.
So
totally.
that's brilliant, Shamash. Thank you. And Elspeth, could we hear a bit about your experiences of not obviously too much about the challenges if you don't feel comfortable with that, but more the kind of benefits that you found from finding mindfulness?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I came out of this period of really quite chronic stress, if I'm blunt about it. I'd had about 7 years of worry that was out of my control, including being a parent, parenting a child with allergies, looking after parents who are terminally ill, being in a different country from them, going through this divorce that seemed to go on and on and on forever, cost tens of thousands of pounds. And yeah, really challenging time. And actually, I remember it was your sister who I worked with, Richard, remarking to her in the office one day when everything was over. I said to her, my mind is just wanting to go to what bad stuff is coming next. I'm looking out, I'm scanning for threats, and I was just so affected. I think it was the trauma, if I'm blunt about it again, although I didn't see it that way at the time. I just tried to normalize everything. So I'd reached this point of being on red alert and really find that hard to move forward from. So when I found mindfulness, I actually found it through an app to begin with, and I used it as a crutch, as probably many people do to begin with. It was whenever I felt stressed or felt really uptight, when things got out of control, I'd get my app and I'd go and sit down and listen to a meditation, and I used it to help me find calm. But over time, I began to make it a daily habit, and it became something I would do at the same time every morning. My meditation time got longer and longer. And I found that by sitting and practicing, and we call it practice because it then grows arms and legs and evolves to become part of our daily life. And I found that it would come into my daily life. I'd be doing something and I'd notice things, and actually I'd start to find joy and stuff. Instead of looking out for the next awful thing that was going to happen, I became open to the prospect that something magical or something wonderful could happen. And that happens over time, obviously, but there's a real liberation that comes with that too. So yeah.
Brilliant. And then I'm guessing you mentioned this in the introduction, you got so much from it then that you thought, I have to share this with people. Is that what happened next? And that's how you found Shamash, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did an online course, and I probably didn't engage in that as much to begin with. But then I trained with Shamash to teach. And I think through learning to teach, it really deepens our own practice. It really so much, because Shamash's style, if I can say so, is very warm and humorous, and there's a real, as Shamash mentioned the word kindful, there's a real kind approach, and I think when you're taught with kindness, it really opens up the learning centers in the brain, and makes you want to learn more. So yeah, trained to teach over a period of months, and actually that was online training at the time, and it suited me because I was a single parent. I couldn't take off for weekends to train in person, and it meant I could catch up on stuff in my own time, and it was really, really effective. And also having had that experience has allowed me then to know that I can teach effectively online myself now. So really, really enjoy sharing mindfulness with other people.
Brilliant.
It's really powerful.
Love it. And I must admit, I'm feeling really relaxed here, being in both your presence. It's great. you both have that kind of really just relaxed, warm aura, which is great. So like I've been dabbling, I would say, in meditation, mindfulness for quite a number of years. But Shamash, what would you say perhaps to somebody who thinks, oh, that's all spiritual woo-woo, and like, what's the kind of science behind it, as it were?
Well, interestingly, I mean, I think a lot of people trust the World Health Organization nowadays, and they've released a whole paper about how to manage stress and reduce stress. And it's all mindfulness based, amazingly, and actually based on that thing I mentioned, ACT as well. It's all about being present, learning to be open to your emotions, being flexible in your approach, being clear about what you're passionate about, what's your heart's desires, making space for those difficult emotions and thoughts as you continue to move forward in your life, and just doing very short exercises. So probably if you're interested in reducing your stress, for example, you'll find that, or most people will find, if you want to look from a science perspective, that mindfulness has got a really good basis for it. But it's not for everyone to practice for long periods of time meditation, or even for 10 or 15 minutes. For some people, they don't want to get into mindfulness that way. And you can try it very, very small amounts. So you can literally start with just one breath or 2 or 3 breaths. A nice analogy that I've been thinking in my mind recently is of sowing seeds. So, you can put little seeds of mindfulness into your life. So when you wake up in the morning, you could take 2 or 3 just conscious breaths, and maybe that's your practice. Or maybe before you have your breakfast or your lunch or your dinner, you kind of reflect on what you're grateful for example. When someone's speaking, at least for the first few moments, you just put down all your other thoughts and you try to be really present for what they're saying, rather than thinking about what you're going to say next. When you're going for a walk, rather than always listening to the music or your audiobook, you may spend a bit of time actually cultivating present moment awareness, noticing the nature around you. So you can start planting these seeds of mindfulness into your life, and one of them may germinate. So you need to experiment, just like seeds. Some people on rocky ground, or some are not ready to grow, but some of them will grow naturally. I love what Elspeth said. She started off with an app, and she started with doing some short mindfulness practices, and it naturally grew. You allow it to grow to the size that's right for you. And for some it's more than, and for others it's less, but every person's different, every life is different. So you need to find what's right for us. So yeah, I think that's kind of the attitude and approach that I like to share with others. And then it's accessible for everyone. Everyone can take a breath or a few breaths to come into the here and now, into the present moment, and see if it grows from there.
I love it. And isn't it, I suppose this just a reflection myself, it's quite ironic that whenever I think I don't have time to sit in mindfulness or meditation, that's the time that I need it absolutely the most.
Yeah.
And isn't that an excuse perhaps you hear a lot, is, oh, I wouldn't have time for that. But that's the people that perhaps really, really need it. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can think of that as a cue. Like when you have the thought, I'm too busy to be mindful. I've just got so much stuff to do. That thought can be an anchor for you to remind you, oh, okay, I'm rushing too much here. Let me stop and take a few breaths. Otherwise, I'm gonna make more mistakes than I need to.
Brilliant, great. So I'd like to just go back to the book a bit. So just for anybody who's listening, for me, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a book that not necessarily you have to read like from cover to cover. It's like a bit of a reference book almost. And I loved how you can nearly look up your specific challenge that you're having and go through it. And I absolutely love that. And so Elspeth, your section specifically is around mindful co-parenting and single parenting.
Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about that? Just a little bit about your section and how that kind of came about?
Yes, absolutely. So I think co-parenting, so where two parents usually who live in separate locations are looking after the same children, usually from different houses, that already is a challenging situation. That comes with its own set of problems. And to then go into the lockdown that we went into last March, and we're back in again, that was a complete, that turned everything on its head. That brought more challenges. I think there were even laws that came out, or there was a bit of confusion about what children were allowed to do. So there were people telling us that the children actually weren't allowed to travel back and forwards between houses. So it was all confusing and a difficult time. And it also meant that this routine that we'd worked hard, my ex-husband and I had worked hard to put in place with lawyers several years before, this was suddenly being challenged. And that routine gave us a sense of knowing where we stood. It was something the kids knew what was happening at each, on each given day. And then to suddenly have that challenge, that was really quite difficult. So really, over the course of lockdown, it was a real opportunity for us then to recognise our commonality, for us to realise that we needed to put aside whatever differences we had. We each had our own challenges. There would have been financial concerns on both our parts, and concerns about the health of family members, all of that going on as well. But we needed to come together to find some sort of constructive approach to parent the children. And that actually worked really well. So where we'd maybe come from a place of a lot of animosity, there were a lot of challenges around the divorce. I personally carried a lot of resentment for a long time before I practiced acceptance and a willingness to allow things to soften, to let things go, to show it kindness. And that really changed things. That was a game changer. So putting that into practice during lockdown and recognizing, well, we need to work together here. We're both on the same page. And the key thing is that the children are looked after and supported, and that they know what's happening. And we set aside whatever differences we had, and it actually has strengthened our co-parenting relationship. There have been a lot of positives, as you mentioned, Richard, that have come out of this really challenging time for many of us. But that's certainly one positive that's come out of it, is that our co-parenting relationship is stronger as a result.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's so key. And for someone, and you may know this, Elspeth, having worked with my sister, having parents that divorced at quite a young age myself, I can absolutely see the benefits of that without a doubt. And as I read your section, well, that was one reflection, was kind of like, wow, things could have been much better if this kind of material was around in those days. But the other reflection that I had, I suppose it only dawned on me in your section, but would I be right in saying that there's a bit of that parenting section for all of us? Because a lot, the reflection for me was like, sometimes it's about parenting ourselves in a productive way as well, if that makes sense. Obviously, that was my reflection coming from somebody who lives alone. And I realized some of those little insights. I was like, wow, this applies to me. Even though your section was about parents, I was like, this applies to me looking after myself too. If that makes sense. That was my kind of reflection from that also.
Wow.
But I loved it. Really, really good.
Great. Well, that's an interesting insight. Thanks, Richard. I hadn't thought of it like that before, but yeah, that's interesting.
So there's a couple of pieces, a couple of words actually that I would kind of like to talk to. And one of them is overwhelm. And the other one, being a bit more positive, is gratitude. So can we take a bit of overwhelm? Like somebody listening to this, I would say a lot of people listening to this probably feel a little bit overwhelmed at the minute. Like, what's going to happen? Back to children. When school's going to open? What about my job? All this stuff. When even can we go on holiday again? All this kind of thing. So, what would you say to those people? Like, Shamash, how would you kind of get them started? Maybe on a bit of mindfulness or.
Yeah, well, I think the first step is. We've talked quite a bit about acceptance, and it really, really helps, especially in this situation. So, so much on the internet and in the books is about fixing things, trying to get like, oh, you're feeling overwhelmed, do this, do that. But I think it's nice to start with acceptance. In fact, there's a practice which I share quite often. The acronym is RAIN, RAIN, and I could talk through that, and that could help some people. So the R stands for recognize. So if you feel overwhelmed or you're in a really difficult situation, first of all, recognize what's going on there. You don't even need to do the acceptance bit to start with. And maybe that's the only thing that you'll do. It's okay to just do one of these steps, but start with recognizing what's actually going on right now. What's happening? How am I feeling? What thoughts are going in my head? What's happening around me and what's happening in the world as a whole? And just to notice, that's great. So recognize, and there's a curiosity coming. The next step is to start cultivating some acceptance. So noticing that, accepting, and you can actually do that by just having the thought, I accept I am feeling overwhelmed at the moment. And you'd think that would make us feel more overwhelmed. But ironically, once we accept, or we just say that statement in our head, there's part of us that's fighting it. And suddenly by saying, actually, yeah, I'm feeling overwhelmed at the moment. I'm feeling anxious at the moment. And I'm feeling something else. I'm feeling scared about something. By actually saying those statements in your mind, acknowledging it, you're starting to accept it. And you can also, at that point, acknowledge that this is a difficult time for you. The next step, I, stands for investigate. So you start to become a bit more curious. So you may ask, okay, where am I feeling it specifically? Am I feeling it in my belly? Am I feeling it in my legs or my arms? Is it happening in my shoulders? So you can actually start becoming curious, especially in the body. That can really help because your physical body is always in the present moment. So by even noticing these difficult feelings and sensations, you're actually being mindful. It's not about feeling calm all the time. And then the last one's a little bit unusual. N stands for non-identify. And that's actually recognizing that, yes, you're feeling overwhelmed at the moment, but we often say like, I am overwhelmed, or I am depressed, or I am anxious. But the non-identify bit is about stepping back from it, seeing it from the bigger picture. So like, instead of saying that, you may say, I notice that there's the feeling of overwhelm happening right now. So there's a difference between you and what you're feeling, or I'm noticing I'm having some negative thoughts that are arising right now. So when you create that space between you and the thoughts or the feelings or the belief, you don't have to be so fixated or identified. You start creating a more flexible sense of who you are. And there's a wonderful freedom that can arise from that. And it may not feel like amazing straight away, but even if you just have this tiny sense of, okay, there's a bit of space between me and this difficulty that I'm going through, then there's some movement. You may be able to think of some more creative solution, like talking to someone about it or sharing your feelings with someone else. These are all very healthy things you can do, exercise and things. So all these things are different factors that can help you in that. But maybe you can start with this RAIN exercise as a starter point before you decide, okay, what would be a helpful action to take after this?
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And I would guess, Elspeth, your experience, it sounds like that was particularly overwhelming, your challenges you went through. And
Yeah.
is that, I'm guessing, it wasn't a light bulb moment like bang, the overwhelm's gone, but how did that kind of happen where you got to a space of feeling a bit better?
Yeah, it was absolutely overwhelming to the point where it affected my health, and really took over day-to-day life and the thoughts that were coming up. And I think if I touch on what Shamash was saying about acceptance and almost this willingness to hold space, gently hold whatever's happening without resisting it. And there's this really wonderful analogy that I actually share with my clients that comes from Dr. Hank Roberts. I don't know if you've come across him, Shamash, but he's an ACT practitioner in Oregon. And I think that's a cactus behind you. I'm looking at your plants, and he shares this wonderful analogy of, if you think about holding a feather in your cupped hands, so you can really easily hold a small feather. It's soft, it's fluffy, it's light. It's probably quite pleasant to hold a feather in your cupped hands. But you can also hold your hands out and hold a very small potted prickly cactus. And you can hold that prickly cactus in exactly the same way, as gently as you would hold a feather. And now if you start to struggle with the cactus, you're going to get hurt, it's going to be painful, but you can hold it in that same gentle way in the cupped hands. And I love that analogy because it's almost the same way that we can hold all our difficulties and our challenges, not resisting them, not struggling with them, but just gently holding space. And I think the more and more I started to accept the difficulties, the more I started to show kindness towards any challenges I was having, so if I'm having a difficult conversation with my children's dad, there are challenges, and there will be challenges that keep coming up. If I can show that challenge, that experience, kindness and warmth and friendliness and gentleness, it really allows me to move forward much more smoothly than getting caught up in all these struggles.
Wow, I love that analogy. Thank you so much for that. That is so applicable to everything at the minute, really. So I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot out of that. So thank you. And that leads us on nicely to the second word that I said, which was gratitude. Now, I can share from my point of view, honestly, gratitude has changed my life. I could go as extreme to say it's pretty much saved my life. I've been through a lot of kind of challenges myself. I won't go into detail, but just mental health challenges and all the rest of it. And whenever I got to the stage where, and now this is only relatively recently, where I could be grateful for it all, like to be grateful for absolutely every last bit of it, because I wouldn't be sitting here, the person that I am, without it. You know what I mean? Now, that would have been, if you had told me that 6-7 years ago, I would have thought, how can I be grateful for this? This is crazy, But I think slowly but surely, I got to that place. And now for me, gratitude, honestly, is absolutely something that I practice every day. And it's been completely life-changing. So could we talk a little bit about that? Like, why is gratitude so powerful? Like, it's so powerful beyond belief.
Well, I would say it's because we have what I've read it scientists call a negativity bias. So if you think about it from a survival perspective, if everyone was extremely positive all the time, we'd be taking extreme risks. And if you go back, hundreds of thousands of years where there's dangerous animals, there's dangerous plants, imagine if there's all these dangerous poisonous berries and you're like, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. You just started eating them all. Then those people who kept saying, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine, unfortunately, those people died out. And the ones that survived were the ones that didn't take risk. So we've evolved in a way to be kind of very cautious and think about worries and concerns. We've evolved from a survival perspective. And that works to a certain extent for animals and mammals that have evolved for millions of years. But human beings are, I've never thought of it like this, but we're almost like an experiment of nature. We've just came about a couple of 100,000 years ago, which is like that much compared to evolution. And you're like, oh, what would happen if we gave these animals really huge, powerful brains? What would happen? And so we're just at the beginning stage of that evolution. And what we're doing with that brain is we're creating all these amazing technologies But the other thing that happens is that we can actually visualize what's going to happen in the future. We can replay things that happened in the past. But rather than just seeing them like a movie, we actually react to it. We start getting all these different emotions that come up. So you could think about something scary in the future right now, and you literally have those emotions. Your heart would be beating fast, but there's no need for your heart to beat fast at all. It's a complete waste of energy. So it's a misdesign of the evolution system in a way. And so if we have a negativity bias, if you think back to a day, we don't often say, oh, it was so wonderful that today I could breathe and I could see the sky and I had running water today and I managed to have meals and no animals ate me today or whatever. We don't think about all the things that could have gone wrong that didn't. But if one small thing went wrong, and if you ask someone, hey, how's your day? That the mind would very quickly think about that. They wouldn't say, oh, wonderful, I had running water again, just like I've had for the last 40 years or something. You think about the one thing that went wrong. So gratitude is great because we can use that same mind that has evolved to focus on negative to actually consciously think about actually what is going well. So it doesn't take actually long at all. And maybe it wouldn't have had much of an effect, but the scientists have found it has a really huge effect. It really changes people's well-being more than even, spending years trying to get promotions and earning loads of money or all these other things that you could do with your money, even going on holidays and stuff. Actually, doing this simple activity every day, cultivating a bit of gratitude is really, really powerful. And so then rather than releasing all these stress hormones into your system, worrying all the time, you can start taking a few moments, as you did, to start thinking about what you're grateful for. And again, it's a bit like the seeds that we mentioned earlier, the mindfulness seeds. The gratitude is like that too. It's a seed that you water, and at the beginning, you may not feel anything. You may not think, we're in these such challenging times right now. Should I even be grateful for anything? I should maybe just think about all the suffering in the world. But actually, it starts becoming a skill that you learn and develop and grow. And it seems like you've grown it to such a wonderful level that you're grateful for everything, even the difficulties and the challenges. And there's not many people that share that, actually. That's really, really powerful. And it can give you a huge amount of resilience and strength, because of then you don't see the difficulties as something that you have to avoid or run away from, but actually something that you can grow from. So awesome. I love that.
I would say that it's funny because, it takes a lot of practice in the present. I'm not good at it in the present. I wouldn't say that, but in terms of the past, like there's stuff that I would have dwelled on, like I would have stared at the past for almost years about mistakes that I'd made and things. And to get to that place of being grateful for everything, it has been fantastic. It didn't happen overnight, that's for sure, but it has been great. And I want to move on maybe a little bit. We mentioned at the start, how mindfulness, like in businesses, mindfulness in the workplace. I am actually, my work is a civil servant, and I know it is coming into civil service and things like that. So how do you see the benefits, to business people and that sort of thing as well? So either Elspeth or Shamash, or
Elspeth, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's something that needs, they need more of. Having worked in HR for almost 16 years, and thought that I was going to be working with people, and realizing that a lot of workplaces really aren't that people focused. I think there is a huge turn happening. I think it's certainly this year there's going to be a lot more emphasis put on staff well-being, but I think we need to put a huge amount more into it, simply because most of us spend the majority of our life at our work, in our workplace. But I know you do a lot of training with workplaces as well, Shamash, so you might have an angle on it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of become an accepted thing to actually bring mindfulness into the workplace, and some companies and organizations are trying to do it in a genuinely quality way, and others just do it as like a tick box that, oh yeah, we need to give them mindfulness. But the great thing is that we weren't there 10 or 15 years ago. People would be like, well, that's a bit weird doing meditation or mindfulness in the workplace. So great thing that it's been accepted. And maybe I could share a little bit more about the ACT stuff, acceptance and commitment training and mindfulness, and how that's particularly relevant in the workplace. So what this approach is all about is helping people to be clear about what their values are, what's really important to them. And when people start to become clear what their values are, so for example, let's say it's creativity and kindness and learning something new. If people can start becoming clear what their values are and start applying them in the work they do, then they're far more passionate about it. They're far more motivated about it, and their work becomes meaningful. So it could be doing, like, let's say if you do, this could be applied to everyone, like even someone who's, let's say, working in a supermarket, but their value is about being curious and connecting with people. So then they could be given a role in that organization where, you know, they deal with customer service, they're involved in learning new things, and they're applying those skills in the work that they do. And so that I think is really, really nice. And that can help people to feel like they're doing something that's fulfilling. And I think, you know, if you do research, you'll find that, you know, a huge percentage of people just feel that they're just doing the 9 to 5 in a very mechanical way, and they hate it, and they're not really putting their heart into it at all. The other thing is that the kindness thing is so important. And I get the sense of corporate organizations as people are, it's a bit of a blame culture going on, and people are always thinking about how they can blame each other for, or whose responsibility was this, did you do that or did you not do that, rather than a much more kind and friendly vibe and atmosphere. And as people start doing mindfulness practice and they start to realize how harsh their own tone is in their mind, and it starts to become more kind and more grateful, then that same language will start pouring out to others as well. So they're more likely to say that. And so the communication improves. I think that can create an amazing atmosphere. And also simply, you know, by being mindful, by being present, even if you think of it from someone who's running their own kind of business organization, if you're more mindful and present, you're noticing what's going on, you're noticing and responding to customers and what they're saying, you're thinking about, you know, what's happening in the market and how you can respond to it. I guess, I mean, for example, even this book, like if we were very fixated about, oh, we always do this kind of training, we always do it in this way, then we wouldn't have had the opportunity to write this book. But, you know, all the different mindful teachers thought, okay, you know, I can't do what I normally do. What can I do differently? And that gave an opportunity for them all to share, gave them all an opportunity to share their website so they could connect with new people. So by being mindful, you can also be more flexible and you can adapt to the needs of each moment. So many benefits, I think, for companies in the workplace, and a lot of people are keen to practice mindfulness at work now.
Brilliant. Yeah, love it. And actually, I remember reading that in the first section of the book about the different insights and different perspectives, which I think is a really, as you just pointed out, a really valuable thing about the book. So people can go, and you mentioned it earlier before about, you know, experimenting and playing around, and they can do that with the recordings that you have online as well, experiment with certain ones. So I wanted to ask if, and we didn't actually talk about this, I mentioned it in the email, but we didn't talk about this before. Do you think, was there any exercise, or maybe Elspeth, is there anything that you could lead us in for 5 minutes, just a really quick, like, mindfulness exercise? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy. Shamash, you're the expert. I don't know if
No,
you want to.
I'd love to. I'd love to hear a meditation by you. Brilliant.
I've listened to a few of yours, Elspeth, and your voice is really calming. I've really enjoyed them.
Okay,
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just 5 minutes or so, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. We could just do a quick mindful pause then, a check in with ourselves. So just settling in where you are then, just allowing your body to be comfortable. Maybe even just noticing if you could allow yourself to be even 1% more comfortable. Just adjusting slightly, allowing the body to settle. And just beginning to notice that your body is held and supported by wherever you're sitting. Noticing that contact between your body and the chair. Noticing the contact between your soles of your feet and the floor. And perhaps just becoming aware of the temperature of the body. Just noticing maybe how the hands feel, maybe any areas of warmth or coolness. And just checking in with the whole of your body. So having this sense of being aware of the whole body resting as you sit. And maybe just noticing any sensations, any tensions or tingling. And also just noticing any sense of judging these sensations as being good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant. And seeing if you can let go of any judgments for a moment or two. And just allow things to be just as they are. And you might now notice any thoughts that are present at this moment. So in much the same way as we can watch the sky and notice the clouds passing, birds passing, we can take a step back and just notice what thoughts are passing by. And again, just noticing any thoughts that grab our attention, any thoughts that we might become hooked to. Seeing if we can simply notice these as thoughts. If anything becomes very challenging, we might even say to ourselves at this moment, I notice that I'm having the thought that, whatever it might be. And then just noticing any emotion that might be present at the moment. And perhaps none at all, or perhaps there are several. So just tuning into anything that might be present. Seeing if you can gently hold space to welcome all of your emotions. And also notice any sense of resistance or pushing away. We might typically push away challenging emotions. Seeing if you can have a sense of inviting all of the emotions up onto your knee and allowing them to rest with you while you breathe. And just bringing awareness to your breath now, which is another sensation in your body. And just being curious and noticing where you feel the breath most strongly at this moment. And you'll notice your mind wanders, and that's perfectly normal. That's what our minds do. Just noticing where your mind wants to go to. And then just gently guiding your awareness back to the sense of your whole body, breathing, your whole body expanding and releasing with each in-breath and each out-breath. And then as you come back to the space around you, maybe just having a sense of how you could take this mindful awareness forwards with you into the rest of your day. Perhaps even just noticing what meaningful action you could take as you move forwards. Maybe just bringing some movement back into the body. Be wiggling your fingers and toes as you come back into the space around you when you're ready. Noticing I need to roll my shoulders a bit.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Really
I loved
amazing.
it. Absolutely loved it.
Thank you.
So nice. Yeah, brilliant.
You should have this we should do this every week.
Yeah, without a doubt. And there was one thing struck me there. One of the thoughts that I had is, and I really like this about mindfulness. I suppose whenever I first started dabbling in meditation, and I think a lot of people experience this, it's so frustrating because you're thinking you're trying to empty your mind, whereas mindfulness, isn't it about recognizing there are thoughts there? There's going to be thoughts there for sure. So I love that. It takes the stress off, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
You don't have to try to do anything at all, really.
Exactly. I was doing a meditation this morning and we were actually inviting our thoughts in, and quite a few people said that, I tried to, have lots of thoughts in my mind and my mind was much quieter than normal. So some people had lots of thoughts, but quite a few people said that. So when we try to control, it has the opposite. It's a bit like the prickly cactus that Elspeth. Yeah. It's like, you can think of your mind like that as well. When you're trying to control it or trying to get it still, get it quiet, you just let it be. And it takes the stress of it, as you said. So really nice.
I love it. So thank you so much for this this interview.
It was really fun.
Thank you.
So if somebody wants to buy, which I'm sure there'll be many people in the group will want to get hold of this book, it's available on Amazon, isn't that right?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon, and we're actually making it available free now. Actually, I've decided to offer it as a download. So I'll share a link. So if people want a PDF, they can't afford, it might be £1 or £2 or £3 on Amazon and Kindle. Yeah. But if they can't afford it, then I can share a link and they can just have it as a gift.
Fantastic. That is wonderful. And as I said, I was blown away when I went online, just the sheer content. People enjoyed that. Mindfulness. Elspeth, obviously you have some on there. Shamash, you have some on there, and loads of other people as well. So it's brilliant. You can choose because I find, isn't it true, you have to sort of shop around a bit. You get a voice that really resonates, kind of thing. Yeah. So that's where the portal online is fantastic. So that's great. And then just for yourselves personally, Elspeth, do you want to share what you're up to, your website and things where people could check you out if they wish?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Richard. So my website's www.pausetobe.co.uk. I also have a Facebook page. And at the moment, I'm running Monday lunchtime mindfulness sessions, which people can drop into whenever they're having a break from their work. A lot of people find that useful to take a break in the middle of the day. And it's just a half-hour session, and I run those in blocks of 4. And I'm also teaching ACT that Shamash mentioned, introductory courses on a Tuesday night and a Wednesday night at the moment. So we're part way through with both those programs, but I enjoy teaching it so much. I'll be doing another one later in the year. So that's Brilliant. Me.
Thank you. And we'll put the link somewhere around the video as well, so people can check that out. Excellent. And Shamash, can you remind us what's your link and where can people check out more?
Yeah, they can find most things on my name, so shamashalidina.com. But the main things I'm doing at the moment, I'm enjoying this daily mindfulness club that we have. So dailymindfulnessclub.com. We can do a daily meditation every morning, which is fun. And and if they're interested in being a teacher of mindfulness, they can get in touch as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I definitely feel really relaxed after this, and I'm sure a lot of people get a lot of value out of it. So thank you so much. And I'll stop recording there. Thank you.
Thank you.